My name is Nancy Yates, and my daughter Sophia lives in Washington, D.C. She was wearing your Humans Against Ted Cruz t-shirt while she was walking her dog and minding her own business, and then all of a sudden a woman rushed towards her and grabbed her by both elbows and said, "I love your t-shirt." And it was Professor Elizabeth Warren, or Senator Elizabeth Warren. Yes.
Fabulous.
And so now they're buds. They run into each other in the grocery store and all that. But only because of the t-shirt did she get to meet Senator Warren, and she wears your shirt all the time around D.C.
What a great story. Awesome.
I love that.
It's Wednesday, December 10th, 2025, and this is the Progress Texas Daily Dispatch, rapid response on the breaking news stories Texas progressives need to know. I'm Chris Mosier. The dust is settling from the filing deadline earlier this week, and the new landscape of the race for the U.S. Senate has become central to the conversation, with Dallas Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett in and former Dallas Congressman Colin Allred out. The primary contest between Crockett and Austin State Rep. James Tallarico takes center stage, and the nuances of that choice are only beginning to take shape for Texas progressives, now facing a choice between two genuine treasures of our movement. Gabby Birnbaum at the Texas Tribune is one of several journalists beginning to paint this new picture. She writes of the division that's developed within the ranks of progressive thought leaders and consultant types, some of whom see Crockett's entry into the Senate race as part of the continued ascendancy of one of our most gifted messengers and fighters at the forefront of a new expansion of the electorate in Texas. Others worry that the polarity that's present within the existing electorate over Crockett will undermine the Democrat shot at the Senate in November. Crockett plans to win by winning over voters who heretofore have sat on the sidelines. Her doubters worry that too many of those possible new Democratic voters in Texas have been tainted by the Trump Kool-Aid, a flavor that features a visceral disdain for Crockett, based not only on her race and gender, but for that same outspoken, brazen, competitive, and confrontational streak that progressives adore her for. The Republican side, including both of their Senate candidates, are in open glee over the prospect of facing Jasmine Crockett in November, in much the same fashion that progressives have expressed a preference to face the loathsome Ken Paxton over the more buttoned-down John Cornyn in November, hoping for the advantages of facing a candidate that many Texas voters love to hate. And it turns out that the GOP machine may have had an active hand in inspiring Congresswoman Crockett to run. A bit of a bombshell report from Reese Gorman at Notice says the National Republican Senatorial Committee, the NRSC, has actively worked behind the scenes to encourage Congresswoman Crockett to enter the Texas Senate Democratic primary, believing she is the easiest opponent for Republicans to defeat. This all comes from Republican concerns about Cornyn facing a difficult primary challenge from Paxton, as polls suggested that Paxton would fare poorly in a general election against a variety of Democrats, including Colin Allred. Sensing an opportunity when Crockett was excluded from a major Democratic strategy meeting, the NRSC included Crockett in a July poll of their own that showed her leading the Democratic field, and then executed a so-called AstroTurf recruitment process, a strategy to disseminate their polling results far and wide to create a narrative that Crockett's popularity was surging. Republicans have been seeding positive polls in progressive digital spaces and orchestrating direct outreach to Democratic voters, urging them to contact Congresswoman Crockett's office to ask her to run, which of course she eventually did. Notice writes here that the Republican NRSC's interference in the Democratic primary continues, with plans to organize conservative donors, MAGA money, to covertly back Congresswoman Crockett during the Democratic primary against James Tallarico. In summary, the Republicans see the dividing lines between Democrats and are not shy about using oodles of money and covert strategy to exploit them. This is a bombshell report from Notice, and it's linked in the show notes. As we mentioned yesterday, in the race for Texas Railroad Commissioner, Houston State Rep. John Rosenthal ends up unopposed in the Democratic primary, which we see as great news. It comes along with a curious turn, though, as the person who seems most likely to challenge Rep. Rosenthal in the primary was the Texas Democratic Party's last nominee for the Texas Railroad Commission in 2024, Catherine Colbert, who did indeed file for 2026, but as a Republican. This following commentary from her Democratic primary opponent last time around, drilling engineer Bill Birch, indicating his doubts about Colbert's loyalty to the Democratic Party. Well, there's more to this story, it turns out, Michelle Davis of the leading Lone Star Left Substack heard our report yesterday and issued one of her own in response, saying that Colbert had continued to hide her intentions to file as a Republican as of late October when she sent a request to Davis to list her campaign materials on Davis's widely read Lone Star Left Democratic platform. Davis writes, quote, "Switching from Democrat to Republican is not a decision you make on a whim. You don't wake up one morning, pour your coffee, and say, you know what, forget everything I've ever said publicly, every donor I've taken money from, every volunteer who's knocked doors for me. I think I'll join the party of election deniers and book banners today." That's not how campaigns work. This was a plan. This was a rollout. This was a rebrand that began before she emailed me, and she used my work, my time, and my audience as a stepping stone on her way out the door, unquote. Pretty insane. And we're interested to hear soon about what State Rep John Rosenthal thinks about all of this. There's a headline this morning talking about a major Democratic win in a place that has gone 30 years without one. Sound familiar? Texas Democrats dream of headlines like that, but this one's out of Miami, Florida. Richard Luscombe at The Guardian writes that Democrat and former County Commissioner Eileen Higgins was elected mayor of Miami last night in a stunning upset victory that reverses a run of recent Republican successes in Florida and adds to a sequence of Democratic wins across the country that have served to highlight the growing level of resistance to Donald Trump in his second term. At Progress Texas, our intention is to keep that blue wave rolling right on into the Lone Star State, but make no mistake, as some of us have eagerly watched the tide begin to turn, our opponents have their foot on the gas. And while we've been understandably preoccupied lately with the filing deadline and the related dropping dominoes that came with it, it's been full steam ahead and business as usual for the right-wing elements now in almost full control of life in Texas, from our schools to our libraries to our financial lives and futures to our basic rights. For example, Governor Greg Abbott and Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick held a joint news conference at the governor's mansion on Monday to announce a new partnership with Turning Point USA to create chapters of the right-wing organization on every high school campus in the state of Texas, complete with the threat of state intervention against the administration of any school that would dare resist. They're to be called Club America chapters, and they appear to be coming to your kids' high school sooner than later. A majority of the Arlington City Council ignored overwhelming public testimony yesterday and voted to uphold a suspension on discrimination protections for LGBTQ+ residents of Arlington, claiming fear of that same type of state intervention. The vote was 5-4, with council members Rebecca Boxall, Mauricio Galante, Bowie Hogg, Raul Gonzalez, and Long Pham all choosing to leave Arlington's gay community unprotected and vulnerable. Blinn Community College in Brenham is apparently leading the charge on the bathroom bill as laminated paper signs appear on bathroom doors on their campus, designating those spaces as limited to biological men and biological women. Apparently, a college known for students who pretend to attend Texas A&M is not about to allow any ambiguity when it comes to who pees where. The Texas tech bro world has a new rising jackass. Joe Lonsdale is one of those insufferable California to Austin technology transplants, a co-founder of the notorious data surveillance company Palantir, and also one of the co-founders of the right-wing joke school, the University of Austin. Lonsdale has political aspirations, as one might imagine, and is now calling for the return of public executions of people convicted of violent crimes. All part of his defense of Trump and Pete Hegseth murdering suspected Venezuelan drug smugglers by blowing up their boats. Much of this is happening on Twitter, of course, and John, that's not what Keep Austin Weird means. And as you may have heard, the Trump-owned U.S. Supreme Court, while taking time to allow the Trump-ordered gerrymander of the Texas congressional map, has decided they don't have time to review a case out of little old Llano, Texas, against the removal of a bunch of books from public libraries by local officials, essentially allowing book banning, and a move that's likely to encourage a lot more of it across Texas and far beyond. The fight is real, and the fight is here, y'all. And we're glad to have you in it with us. Again, the first of our 2 holiday parties for this year was a great time on Monday night in Austin. So much fun that we're now even more pumped about our second holiday party for 2025. That's coming up this Monday, December 15th in Dallas, featuring a second live podcast recording with gubernatorial candidate Gina Hinojosa, candidate for Attorney General Joe Jaworski, Texas House Democratic Caucus Chair Rep Gene Wu, and we're glad to add to the second party lineup State Rep and candidate for Lieutenant Governor Vicki Goodwin, who had to drop out of the first pod lineup but managed to reschedule for the second. Rep Goodwin, we look forward to seeing you in Dallas next week. This year's holiday celebrations with you are made possible by Shaping the Future supporter Charles Zeller, Fired Up supporter John Adair, Be the Change supporters Alex Andrade, Scott Elphinstone, Howard Cleon, the Honorable Dick Levine, and the Honorable James Tallarico. Persistence supporters the Honorable Yasmin Simon, Jason Smith and Sarah Pareda, Unified, and Jerry Yoss. Good Trouble supporters Allison Grinter Allen, Bright Blue Inc., Alex Clark and Kate Rumsey, hosts of the Mission Texas podcast, John Cotter, Valerie DeBille, Amy Forehand, the Honorable Vicki Goodwin, Freda Held, Joe Jaworski, the Honorable Ron Nierenberg, the Honorable Bill Peterson III, and Mark Yagjian, and Raise More Hell supporters Avow, Louis A. Bedford IV, the Honorable John Busey III, Stuart Campbell, Hannah Cutshall, Charles Hodebeck, Bill Holston, the Honorable Donna Howard, Will Judy, Dave Jones, Angela and Gary Kutak, Jenny Laughlin, Carol Ord, Jennifer Owen, the Palmer for Justice campaign, Mark Ferris, Gary Potts, the Honorable Zoe Kadri, Save Texas, Beth Stromberg, the Honorable Adam Swartz, and the Texas Progressive Caucus. Our mission at Progress Texas is to counter the billionaire and corporate-funded conservative disinformation machine, and we rely largely on listener support to keep doing what we do. Huge thanks to monthly supporters Lisa Batson, Stacy Lawson, and Tim Mahoney. We appreciate all three of you very, very much. Join them and the rest of the team now at progresstexas.org. That's the Progress Texas Daily Dispatch for this Wednesday, December 10th, 2025. Links to all these original stories can be found in our show notes. Progress Texas is a nonprofit, rapid response media organization promoting progressive messages and actions. While campaigns come and go, we're the permanent home for progressive media and action in the Lone Star State. I'm Chris Mosier. Thanks for listening. Have a great day, and we'll catch you again tomorrow morning.